Most people quit just before the breakthrough. The pressure builds, the doubts grow, and escape feels easier than endurance. But the moment you force yourself forward, when quitting whispers and you refuse to listen, that's when your character is forged. Push once more. That step might be the one that rewrites everything. In a few moments, I will teach you how to force yourself to keep going when quitting feels like the only option left. You are closest to victory right before you quit. There's a moment you will never forget, the one right before you quit. That's the moment that defines your life. You may think you're at the end of the road. Nothing seems to move. Progress feels invisible. But here's the truth. You are often just one swing away from the tree falling, one push from the door cracking open, one breath from a breakthrough. Why is it that people quit right before it happens? Because fatigue blinds them. It makes the next step feel pointless. But the ground is softest just before the seed breaks through. Many turn back at the edge, never knowing how close they stood to the gold. You push forward by reminding yourself of the cost of quitting, not just today, but what it will take from your future. Each time you quit, you train yourself to accept less. You weaken your standard. Imagine you're digging through a mountain. You've swung that pickaxe for days, then weeks, then months. Others have stopped. You're tired. But what if the treasure lies behind the next blow? Would you walk away? Ask yourself, what if this pain is proof you're almost there? What if this resistance is your final test? You've come too far. You've endured too much. Don't trade your legacy for temporary relief. Don't step away from your greatness because it's disguised in sweat. When you feel like quitting, that's not the end. That's your cue to go harder. Your mind quits before your body does. The body is far stronger than it appears, but it listens to the voice you allow to lead. Most people quit not because their body gave up, but because their mind whispered, "This is too much," and they believed it. The mind is a master of illusion. It exaggerates pain. It shortens patience. It magnifies fear. But here's the twist. It also responds to command. It can be led, trained, and conditioned. You take back power by changing the conversation in your head. Instead of saying, "I can't do this," you say, "Let's see how far I can go." Instead of, "I'm tired," you say, "This is where I grow stronger." The body follows. Think of a craftsman building a bridge. Halfway across, the wind howls, the foundation shakes. Others call out, "It's too risky." But he knows if he quits now, all the work crumbles. So he steadies his hand and places the next stone. Have you been letting your mind trick you into smallness? Have you surrendered to the first signal of discomfort? You're not weak. You're not done. You're just being tested. And your mind, your most powerful tool, must be shown who leads. Speak strength into your own ears. Stand up. Take another step. Train your mind to obey your will, not your worries. Because once your mind yields to strength, your body will go farther than you ever imagined. Discipline is remembering what you want. People talk about motivation like it's magic, but motivation fades. Storms come, doubts creep in, and in those moments, only one thing keeps you going: discipline. The quiet decision to keep showing up because you remember what you want, even when it's invisible. You were not born to chase every new distraction. You were born to build something lasting. But what you want must be held in your vision every single day, or it disappears. You hold the line by making your goal louder than your excuse. That's how champions are made, not in the heat of applause, but in the silence of self-retreat. Imagine a farmer waking before dawn. No one cheers him, no one sees him. But day after day, he tills, he plants, he waters. Seasons pass. The world only notices when harvest arrives. But he didn't wait for proof. He remembered his mission. So ask yourself, have you forgotten what you said you wanted when you were full of energy? Have you let laziness rewrite your future? Discipline is not punishment. It's self-respect. It's the highest form of self-love. To keep walking when comfort says rest. To stay focused when the world says relax. When you want to quit, remember this. You don't need to feel like doing it. You just need to remember why you started. And then you act anyway. Pain is temporary. Regret is forever. Pain has a voice that cannot be ignored. It screams in the now, loud, raw, immediate. It makes your legs shake, your breath short, and your heart question why you started. But regret is different. It's silent in the crowd, but deafening in solitude. It waits until your day is done and the lights are off. Then it leans in close and asks the question you've been trying to avoid. Did you give everything you had, or did you hold back? Pain is not your enemy. It's the price you pay to earn something real. It's the test that stands between who you are and who you could become. You don't get greatness for free. You pay for it in sweat, strain, and sacrifice. Pain shows up to make sure you're serious. It demands proof. But here's what most people forget. Pain doesn't last. It may roar now, but it will pass. What remains is what it leaves behind. Strength, clarity, a backbone forged in fire. If you look at pain as punishment, you'll run. But if you understand that it's part of the process, part of your transformation, you'll begin to embrace it. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. The discomfort is not breaking you, it's building you. Every ache, every struggle, every time you want to stop and don't, those moments are where your future is born. Visualize a blacksmith hammering molten steel. The fire is intense, the blows are relentless. The steel doesn't enjoy the process, but it endures. It bends, it burns, and with every strike it becomes something stronger, something sharper, something unbreakable. That's what your pain is doing to you. You are being refined. Every challenge is carving you into someone the world can't deny. When the temptation to quit comes, and it will, ask yourself what will hurt more, this moment of pain or the quiet agony of regret that never leaves? What will weigh heavier, the soreness of effort or the ache of what if? The discomfort of now will fade, but the regret of quitting, that's a burden that shows up in the years ahead, when opportunities are gone and the window has closed. You weren't made for ease. You weren't put here to live soft, to hide from difficulty, to coast. You were made for fire, for fight, for trials that make your heart beat faster and your spirit dig deeper. Excellence doesn't arrive wrapped in comfort. It shows up in the form of adversity, and those willing to feel everything and still rise are the ones who earn it. So endure, not because you want to suffer, but only because you're building something bigger than comfort. Push through. Not because the pain disappears, but because it transforms you. Prevail, because your future self is watching every choice you make now. One day, you'll either stand tall with pride or sit still with regret. Decide who you want to be, and pay the price to become them. Winners act without applause. Most people wait. They wait for applause, for validation, for someone to tell them it's time. They want eyes on them before they act. They crave recognition like oxygen, believing that unless the world is watching, the effort isn't real. But the ones who truly win, those who leave a mark that can't be erased, they move without an audience. They train in silence. They rise early, stay late, and grind in shadows where no one claps and no one cheers. Because they don't need the noise, they have the vision. If your greatness depends on being seen, you'll never reach it, because the climb begins in obscurity. The roots of mastery grow deep underground, far from attention, praise, or reward. It's the hours spent alone, choosing discipline over comfort, that forge something real. The strength you need isn't built in front of a crowd. It's built in the dark, when the only one holding you accountable is you. Imagine a sculptor in a dusty workshop. There's no gallery, no admirers, no buyers knocking on the door, just a slab of stone and a burning image in his mind. He chisels each day, unseen. He refines, adjusts, improves, not because anyone is watching, but because he must. Then, one day, the world discovers a masterpiece. But they never saw the long days, the quiet nights, the doubt, the discipline. They see the product, but not the process. And that's the difference between those who dream of greatness and those who become it. The willingness to work without witnesses. You have to ask yourself honestly, would you still do the work if no one ever saw it? Would you train, write, build, sacrifice if no one ever praised it? Because that's where greatness begins, not in the light, but in the silence. Not in the spotlight, but in the shadows. This is where your character is forged. It's not born from applause. It's tested in isolation. You must force yourself to move forward when there's no feedback, no reward, no one saying good job. That's where most people quit, when the silence gets too loud. But those who keep going, they become inevitable. Your consistency when no one's watching becomes your edge. Your relentlessness when no one cares becomes your power. Because when the moment finally comes, when the world looks your way, they won't see someone lucky. They'll see someone undeniable. Someone who didn't need their approval to become great. So build quietly, push daily, perfect your craft in solitude. Don't beg for applause. Become so excellent that applause becomes a side effect. You don't need a spotlight to shine. You need a standard and the fire to meet it again and again, even in the dark. The world will catch up later. For now, let your silence speak for you. Progress hides behind repetition. You won't always see the result of your effort right away, and that's the trap. That's the quiet, brutal test the world gives you when you're trying to build something real. You show up, you put in the work, you give your best, and then nothing. No applause, no result, no visible proof that anything is changing. You're doing everything right, and yet it feels like you're standing still. And in that silence, most people give up. Not because they're weak, not because they lack potential, but because they're blind to what's really happening beneath the surface. Progress doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't always announce itself with loud victories. More often, it comes disguised as repetition, as boredom, as stillness. It comes quietly, behind closed doors, when you've done the same thing for the 100th time and it still feels like nothing is shifting. But the truth is, it is. The shift is happening. The change is building. Just like water wearing away at stone, it's not the strength of the blow, it's the persistence of it. Not one drop, but 1,000. Not one day, but every day. This is how real progress moves. Slowly, invisibly, silently. You won't always get a signal to tell you you're close. The path doesn't warn you when the breakthrough is near. It just dares you to keep going long enough to find out. Picture a man digging a well. Day after day, he digs into dry dirt, breaks rock, and wipes sweat from his brow. People walk by and laugh. They say, he's wasting his time, that there's nothing down there, that he should stop before he embarrasses himself. But he keeps digging, not because he sees water, but because he believes it's there, and one morning the ground breaks differently. With one swing, the dirt shifts, water gushes up. The moment that changes everything. But it wasn't that one swing that did it. It was every swing before it. The hundreds that got no recognition, no reward. Those were the swings that mattered most. You don't need to see the result right now. You need to trust the principle. The law of cause and effect hasn't disappeared. It's just delayed. It's watching you, testing you, asking if you have the patience to keep striking when there's no evidence. It's wondering if you'll keep showing up without needing applause to fuel you. That's where most people stop, right before the shift. They mistake the silence for failure. They assume that just because they can't see progress, it means there isn't any. But growth doesn't shout. It whispers, it gathers, it builds quietly until one day it arrives all at once, and the world calls it overnight success. But you'll know better. You'll know how many nights went into it, how many mornings you chose discipline over doubt. Ask yourself honestly, have you stopped just because you couldn't see the change? Did you pause the process because you confused stillness with stagnation? Because sometimes the biggest progress is invisible, and only those who stay the course get to see it break open. Your future doesn't belong to the one who puts in one great effort. It belongs to the one who repeats again, who repeats until the world has no choice but to respond. That is your job, to repeat until it breaks, to trust the unseen, to work in faith, and to remember the swing that cracks the ground is always built on the ones that didn't. Your standards are the blueprint of your life. You never rise above the standard you tolerate. That's the hard truth, not from the world, and especially not from yourself. Whatever line you draw in the sand, whatever level you say is enough, life listens, and then it responds accordingly. If your standard is comfort, you will live inside the walls of mediocrity. If your standard is excuses, you'll find endless reasons to stay small. But if your standard is excellence, if it is effort, if it is discipline, then life has no choice but to stretch and bend and yield to meet you. You don't get what you hope for. You don't get what you post about, dream about, or casually wish would happen. You get what you accept, what you allow, what you demand, not through words, but through action. And every day, your life quietly takes shape around what you're willing to settle for. The transformation begins not when something changes outside you, but when something shifts within. You change your life the moment you decide what is now non-negotiable. The moment you say, this is no longer acceptable. I no longer live like this. I no longer operate below this line. That decision, made once and defended daily, becomes the invisible force behind every future result. Picture a mason building a wall. He doesn't slap bricks together and hope for the best. He doesn't pick up cracked stones just because he's tired. He checks every edge, every alignment. Even when he's worn down and aching, he lifts each brick with care, because he knows what feels small now becomes the foundation later. Every inch matters. Every detail determines strength. That's the power of a standard. What you do in private becomes the quality of your public life. You have to ask yourself, have you let laziness draw your lines? Have you let tiredness or fear or convenience dictate your identity? It's easy to drift. It's easy to compromise when no one's watching, but your future is watching. And every compromise becomes a quiet agreement to stay the same. You deserve more, but wanting isn't enough. Desiring is easy. Demanding is what separates those who move forward from those who stay stuck, especially demanding it from yourself. That's the beginning of real growth, when you stop waiting for the world to elevate you and start elevating yourself. Your life bends toward the level of effort you normalize. If you normalize sloppiness, sloppiness becomes your culture. If you normalize late starts and unfinished tasks, then you become the person who almost. But if you raise the bar and refuse to let it drop, even when you're alone, even when it's hard, then everything in your life is forced to rise to meet it. The people, the results, the outcomes, all of it shifts to the new level you enforce. So stop waiting for a miracle. Stop waiting for someone to rescue your potential. You're not missing a secret. You're missing a standard. One that says, this is who I am now. This is how I show up every time. Set the bar, then hold it. Especially when no one's clapping, especially when the results are slow, especially when it would be easier to let it slide, because the standard you enforce becomes the life you live. Every brick matters, every choice adds up, and the future you're building depends on how precise, how disciplined, and how committed you are today. Action ends fear faster than thinking. Fear doesn't begin as a monster. It begins as a whisper, a question, a doubt. And if you sit with it too long, if you give it space and time, it multiplies. The longer you wait, the louder it gets. The more you overthink, the more it grows. What starts as a flicker becomes a flame, and then a fire you believe you can't control. But here's the truth. Fear isn't the enemy. Inaction is. Fear feeds on your stillness. It thrives when you hesitate, when you stall, when you trade motion for rumination. You don't defeat fear by wrestling with it in your head. You beat fear by doing something, anything, before it has a chance to take root. The mind is a powerful machine. It can build empires and it can build cages. The same imagination that fuels your dreams can also construct prisons when left idle. Sit too long in your thoughts and you'll start inventing enemies that don't exist. A small task becomes a giant. A single conversation becomes a threat. That's not truth, it's distortion, born of delay. You weren't meant to sit and overanalyze your fears. You were meant to move through them. Imagine a traveler standing at the edge of a dense, unfamiliar forest. The trees are tall, the path unclear. He hears rustling, imagines beasts, feels a chill of hesitation. His thoughts race ahead, painting the unknown with the worst possible colors, but then he takes a single step forward. The ground holds. The sounds are just birds. A second step, and the light breaks through the leaves. A third, and the path unfolds beneath his feet. What changed? Not the forest. The forest was always the same. What changed was him. The moment he moved, reality replaced imagination. Truth silenced fear. That is the power of action. The danger is not fear itself. It's what you let fear stop you from doing. Fear will always knock. Always. But it has no power unless you open the door. And the fastest way to keep it locked? Move. Move your body. Move your focus. Move your effort. Action is armor. It doesn't just shield you, it rewires you. You begin to see not just what might go wrong, but what might go right. You reclaim the power that hesitation stole. Think about it. How many things have you talked yourself out of, not because they were truly impossible, but because you sat too long with the fear of them? How many times have you handed over your power to a maybe? The business you didn't start, the conversation you avoided, the change you delayed, not because you weren't ready, but because you paused long enough for fear to write your script. You were meant to lead, to try, to fail forward if needed, but always to move. The truth is, you don't need to feel brave before you act. That's the trap. Most people wait for courage to arrive, like a visitor, but it doesn't come first. Action comes first. Courage follows motion. You build bravery by stacking moments where you moved anyway, where you felt the fear and stepped forward with trembling legs. And the more you move, the less fear controls you. Not because it disappears, but because you've proven to yourself that you can keep going even when it shows up. This is how you take your power back. Not by having all the answers, not by eliminating fear entirely, but by refusing to let fear dictate the pace of your life. It doesn't get to decide your future, you do. And every time you act, you reinforce that truth. You remind yourself who's in charge. Every step forward is a vote for belief over doubt, for purpose over panic, for progress over paralysis. So don't wait to feel ready. Don't wait to feel fearless. That day may never come, but the opportunity to move is always within reach. Just one step, one task, one small act of rebellion against fear's grip. That's all it takes to shift the balance. And once you move, that monster shrinks. That weight lifts. And you remember, you were never powerless. You just needed to act. You don't need permission to begin. Most people wait. They wait for clarity, for perfect conditions, for someone to say, it's time. They wait for a green light that never comes. They stall, not because they lack desire, but because they've convinced themselves that action must be backed by certainty. But the truth is, those who truly win, the builders, the doers, the leaders, they don't wait. They begin before the way is clear. They step forward while the ground is still forming beneath their feet. They move, not because they're fully prepared, but because they've given themselves permission to start. Life doesn't hand you a moment labeled ready. It rarely gives you a complete map. What it gives you is a spark, an idea, a feeling that won't let go. The mistake most make is thinking that the feeling alone isn't enough, that it needs to be accompanied by support, by confirmation, by signs. But waiting for permission is a slow death to potential. Every day you delay, the fire inside you dims just a little more. The longer you stall, the heavier the doubt becomes, and eventually, even the clearest vision fades into maybe someday. You weren't made to be passive. You weren't designed to live on hold, checking for signals from the outside world before making your move. You were born to create, and creation doesn't begin when the stage is set. It begins the moment you say, I go now. That decision alone is the spark that sets everything else in motion. Waiting for certainty is the language of fear. Moving with faith is the language of strength. Imagine a captain standing on his ship at dawn. The sea is covered in fog. The sky is gray. He can't see the horizon. The route isn't clear. And yet, he lifts the anchor, not because he knows every wave, but because he knows where he's going. He trusts the compass, he trusts the journey, he trusts himself. That's what separates motion from stagnation. Belief without visibility. Most stand at the dock, waiting for the sky to clear, but by then, the tide has turned, and the moment is gone. You have to ask yourself, are you still waiting for things to feel right? Are you still hesitating, hoping someone will come along and say, yes, now it's okay to move? Because no one's coming. No one will ever feel your dream the way you do. No one will ever understand your urgency the way your soul does. That's not their fault. It's not their mission. It's yours. And that means you are the only one who can give yourself the go-ahead. There's a kind of internal power that awakens the moment you stop asking for approval. From others, from fear, even from your own doubt. It's the power of self-nod. The quiet, courageous moment when you say, I start anyway. And in that moment, the game changes. Not because the world bends to your will, but because you begin to move, and movement, even in uncertainty, creates momentum. Momentum creates clarity. Clarity reveals the next step. But none of that happens if you don't begin. So many people talk themselves out of their purpose because they think they're not ready. But readiness isn't a requirement, it's a result. You don't become ready by waiting. You become ready by starting. Confidence doesn't arrive first. It is built by showing up over and over, even when your hands shake. You learn on the path, not at the gate, and every step forward is a rebellion against the fear that told you to stand still. You don't need more time. You don't need more validation. You need a decision, a single, final, let's go. That's the moment everything changes. That's when your life begins to shift, because once you start, the world responds. People notice. Opportunities emerge. But none of it arrives until you do. Don't wait for the world to nod. Nod to yourself. Trust your fire. Trust your first step. Even if the road is foggy, even if the plan isn't perfect, begin anyway. Your life isn't waiting for more clarity. It's waiting for you. Excuses are lies you believe. Failure doesn't come from the world outside you. It comes from the whispers within. It isn't the result of your circumstances. It's the result of what you believe about your circumstances. And more often than not, what you believe isn't truth. It's an excuse, a story, a clever explanation that sounds reasonable enough to let you off the hook. You tell yourself why you can't, why it won't work, why now isn't the right time. And if you say it often enough, you stop noticing the lie inside the logic. Excuses always come wrapped in intelligence. They sound sharp, calculated, even rational. I don't have the resources. I'm too tired right now. I need to figure it out first. And yet, behind every excuse is the same hidden purpose: comfort. The excuse wants to keep you safe, not successful. It wants you still, not stretched. Your excuse is not your protector, it is your cage, built by fear and held together by delay. And if you believe it long enough, you begin to live inside it. Most people don't fail dramatically. They fail slowly. They fail by 1,000 tiny hesitations, by all the small yeses to their excuses. They listen to the inner voice that says, start tomorrow, and they nod. They feel the resistance and they back away. They hear the doubt and they obey. And they do this not once, but over and over, until years pass and the life they once dreamed of has quietly drifted out of reach. Excuses are comfortable in the short term and costly in the long term. They offer relief today and regret tomorrow. You get to avoid discomfort in the moment, but what you gain is temporary, and what you lose is progress, growth, possibility, momentum. Every excuse is a small deal you make with fear, trading a piece of your future for a little bit of present comfort. But there is a way to fight them, not by hiding from them. Write them down, speak them out loud, hold them in the light, and ask, is this really true? Because when you do, you'll start to see excuses for what they really are. Not truths, but rehearsed scripts. Old lines you've repeated so often they sound like wisdom. But they're not. They're just masks fear wears to keep you still. Imagine two men standing side by side. One stares at his worn shoes and says, I can't run in these. He looks at the crooked path and says, it's too rough to walk. He looks at his tools and says, they're not good enough to build. So he waits and complains and stays in place. The other man, his shoes are worse. His road is tougher. His tools are basic, but he runs anyway. He walks forward. He builds with what he has. He doesn't wait for perfect. He works with real. One man wins, the other wonders. That's the difference. Not luck, not privilege, not destiny, but decisions. One man made excuses, the other made moves. You have to ask yourself, are your reasons real or are they just convenient? Do they hold up under scrutiny or do they collapse when you stop saying them out of habit and start questioning them with honesty? Too tired or just unwilling to be uncomfortable? Not enough time or just afraid to begin? You've said them enough times. Now say them with a mirror in front of you. Watch how quickly they fall apart. The truth is, your excuses can sound brilliant and still be completely useless. They might win the argument in your mind, but they lose the war in your life. They don't take you forward. They just keep you circling the same life over and over until you convince yourself that good enough is all there is. But here's the moment it changes. When you stop explaining your limitations and start expanding your expectations. The minute you stop defending why you can't is the minute you start discovering how you can. That shift doesn't take years, it takes a decision, a bold, quiet, internal decision to stop accepting the script and start writing your own. Don't let excuses be the architects of your life. Let decisions do that. Let effort shape your direction. Let discipline write your story. You don't need perfect tools. You don't need perfect timing. You need a standard and the willingness to live up to it, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Excuses are optional, but effort, that's how you find out who you really are. You don't need a better reason to act. You just need to stop believing the bad ones. Comfort will rob you without warning. Comfort is the most dangerous thief you'll ever face, not because it's loud or violent, but because it's subtle. It doesn't storm in like fear or failure. It doesn't make you panic or cry. No, comfort is quieter than that. It lulls you. It flatters you. It wraps its arms around you and whispers, you've earned this. And little by little, without fanfare or warning, it robs you. Not of what you have, but of what you could have had. It steals your edge, your fire, your fight. And worst of all, you don't even notice it happening until it's too late. One day you wake up and realize you've been sitting in the same place, thinking the same thoughts, repeating the same patterns, not because you don't want more, but because you stopped chasing it. You started protecting what was easy instead of pursuing what was possible. You started seeking warmth over growth, safety over greatness, and the world let you. Because the world doesn't punish the comfortable, it forgets them. You were not made for comfort, not at your core. That's not how you're wired. Look deeper. You'll find a pulse that beats for challenge, for conquest, for struggle. There's a part of you that lives for the climb, the stretch, the reach, the late nights, the early mornings, the doubt you overcome. That's where your soul ignites, not in the stillness of safety, but in the fire of forward motion. The moment comfort becomes your objective, your purpose begins to die quietly, slowly, without protest. Comfort doesn't care about your potential. It doesn't care about your dreams. It only wants you to stop, to stay, to choose ease over excellence. But there's a cost, one you don't see immediately, a quiet, creeping erosion of who you could have become. It's not that comfort is wrong in doses. Rest is necessary. Recharge is vital. But when comfort becomes your goal, your standard drops. Your hunger fades. Your spirit goes soft. You escape this trap not by eliminating comfort, but by refusing to let it lead. You must train your focus on growth, not ease, on becoming, not relaxing. Results must matter more than rest. Your future must matter more than your fatigue, because what you settle into will soon become what you settle for. You must decide, do you want comfort now or fulfillment later? Picture a lion in captivity. It's safe, it's fed, the zookeepers protect it, there's no danger, no uncertainty, no need to hunt. But over time, something fades. The muscles soften, the instincts dull, the roar quiets. It survives, but it doesn't live. Now picture a lion in the wild, scarred from battles, hungry every day, always alert, always hunting. It bleeds, it chases, it suffers, but it remembers who it is. It still roars, it still rules. One has safety, but no sovereignty. The other has scars, but strength. Which one do you want to be? You have to ask yourself honestly, have you confused peace with laziness? Have you traded ambition for predictability? Have you convinced yourself that you've done enough when in truth, you're just scared to do more? There's nothing wrong with rest, but when rest turns into retreat, when taking it easy becomes your identity instead of your strategy, you're no longer recharging, you're retreating from your own potential. Comfort keeps you warm, but it lets your fire die quietly. And when your fire goes out, you don't just lose energy, you lose your direction. You lose the urgency. You lose the part of you that once looked in the mirror and knew there was more inside. The people who rise, who achieve, who become, those people sweat. They stretch. They embrace discomfort because they understand that discomfort is not the enemy. It's the environment where greatness grows. If you are always choosing what's easy, then you are always avoiding who you could become. And it's not just about big moves. It's about daily decisions. Do you get up early and attack the day, or do you snooze the morning away? Do you have the hard conversation or avoid it for another week? Do you push yourself in training, in learning, in building, or do you wait until it feels right? Because each time you choose comfort over challenge, you chip away at your future. There is life on the other side of effort, not the numb, shallow imitation that comfort offers, but real life. The kind that makes your heart beat faster, the kind that demands your full presence, the kind that gives back tenfold what it takes, but it requires something from you, the willingness to sweat again, to struggle again, to hurt, to fail, to try again. That's where you come alive, not in safety, but in stretch. If you've been coasting, if you've felt yourself drifting, it's time to return to the fire. You don't need to wait for a breakdown or a disaster to wake you up. Wake yourself. Choose to live scarred and strong rather than safe and forgotten. Choose the wild. Choose the climb. Choose to roar again, because comfort may keep you still. But stillness is not where life happens. Life begins when you move, when you chase, when you challenge yourself again, not because you have to, but because you refuse to live beneath your potential. Comfort is a thief. Don't let it steal what's yours. When you're tired, work precise. Tiredness doesn't mean stop. It doesn't mean surrender. It means shift. It's a signal, not a shutdown. Yet most people misinterpret it. When fatigue sets in, they fold. They take it as a full stop, a reason to give in, to lie down and retreat. But that's not what tiredness is asking of you. It's not demanding an end. It's asking for an adjustment. And that small difference is what separates the average from the relentless. The ones who win don't collapse under tiredness. They adapt. The truth is, exhaustion is part of the process. If you're chasing something worthwhile, if you're pushing, climbing, building, fatigue will find you. You will get tired. You will feel heavy. The body will drag. But that doesn't mean you can't keep going. It simply means you have to change how you go. Tiredness doesn't take away your power. It tests how wisely you use it. You must learn that tiredness is not the enemy. Carelessness is. You can still move when you're tired. You just have to move differently. You have to become deliberate. When energy is low, precision matters more than ever. You no longer have the margin for waste. There's no room for flailing, no strength for scattering. Your attention must narrow. Your focus must sharpen. It's not about speed anymore, it's about aim. This is the mistake most people make. They associate tiredness with defeat. But tiredness isn't failure, it's feedback. It's your body telling you to tighten your execution, to drop the unnecessary, to do fewer things better, to become strategic rather than scattered. Tiredness is the invitation to move with intelligence, not intensity. Picture a soldier in the heart of a long battle. The march has drained him. His legs ache, his vision blurs, the weight of the day hangs heavy on his shoulders. But then, the critical moment comes. A decision, a threat, a target. And what does he do? He doesn't panic. He doesn't swing wildly. He stops, he breathes, he steadies his shaking hands. He zones in, not fast, but precise. He pulls the trigger and the tide shifts. Not because he had the most energy left, but because he used what he had with excellence. That is how wars are won, not just through might, but through discipline in fatigue, through staying locked in when everything inside you wants to unravel, through refusing to let tiredness become sloppiness. You're allowed to be tired. You're not allowed to be careless. So ask yourself honestly, are you truly too tired, or are you just too scattered? Are you out of energy, or are you out of clarity? Because many times we mistake mental fog for physical fatigue. We think we've hit a wall when really we've just been hitting too many things at once. We lose power not because we're spent, but because we've been leaking energy on distractions, obligations, expectations that don't actually matter. You don't need more fuel, you need more focus. There's a fire inside you that doesn't rely on how fresh your body feels. That fire is called spirit. And even on your lowest days, it can still burn, but only if you feed it, not with noise, not with panic, but with purpose. Tiredness dims that flame only when you forget why you're moving. But when you remember the mission, when you strip away everything that's not essential, the flame returns, quiet but steady. And with it comes a new kind of strength, not explosive, but enduring, not chaotic, but calculated. Even in exhaustion, you are not powerless. You can choose to move with accuracy. You can choose to take one strong step instead of 20 weak ones. You can choose to breathe, to recalibrate, to sharpen, not stop. That is how you survive the storm. That is how you outlast the doubt. That is how you win. Your goal isn't to always be full of energy. That's unrealistic. The truth is, the more you pursue greatness, the more fatigue you'll face. The real goal is to know what to do when it comes. The real strength lies in your ability to adapt, to shift your pace without losing your path, to slow down without giving up, to refine your movement when your momentum falters. Let the tiredness come. Let it whisper. Let it push. But don't let it take control. Let it teach you. Let it discipline you. Let it forge a new level of focus inside you that doesn't rely on hype or adrenaline. Because the ones who endure aren't always the fastest or the strongest. They're the ones who know how to keep moving smartly when everything around them says stop. So when the heaviness hits, don't collapse. Don't spin in panic. Pause. Breathe. Look at what's essential. Cut the noise. Then act. Not wildly, but wisely. Because one deliberate action in exhaustion can carry more power than 100 scattered ones in energy. Don't quit because you're tired. Shift. Shrink your target. Tighten your form. Raise your accuracy. You are not out of the fight. You're just entering the part that counts the most. The right path won't always feel good. People often make a quiet, costly mistake. They assume the right path will feel right, that it will feel smooth, that it will carry signs of encouragement, ease, and immediate progress. They think the right road will be lit with clarity, paved with validation, and accompanied by applause, but more often than not, that's not how it works. The truth is, the right path, the one that actually leads to growth, to greatness, to purpose, rarely feels good at first. In fact, it often feels like the exact opposite. It feels heavy, it feels uncertain, it feels lonely, and that's exactly how you know you're on it. Growth doesn't feel like inspiration. It feels like resistance. It feels like walking into the unknown with trembling hands and a pounding heart, not knowing exactly what waits on the other side. That's not a sign to stop, that's a sign to continue. Because growth, by its very nature, is uncomfortable. It stretches what's tight. It disturbs what's settled. It pulls apart what's familiar in order to build something new, and that process hurts. The early stages of becoming are rarely filled with rewards. They're filled with tests, with silence, with isolation. You make the right choice, and the world doesn't clap. You take the hard step, and no one notices. You stand on principle, and it costs you. That's what the right path looks like in its raw form. Not victory, not clarity, but pressure. And most people walk away from it thinking they've gone the wrong way, not because it actually was wrong, but because they were measuring it with the wrong instrument, their feelings. Feelings aren't reliable when you're on the path of transformation. They sway with the wind. They scream when challenged. They seek comfort, not truth. That's why you cannot use emotion as your compass. You must anchor yourself to principle. You must walk forward not because it feels good, but because you know it's right. You walk because your mission demands it, because your values demand it, because your future demands it. Imagine a pioneer crossing harsh terrain, rocks underfoot, cold air biting, no path clearly marked. Every step is a battle. Every mile drains his energy. No applause, no promise, to just one foot in front of the other, over and over again. Why does he keep going? Because deep in his bones, he knows on the other side of this pain is a life no one else is brave enough to reach. He doesn't move because the journey is kind. He moves because the destination is worth it. That's the mindset you need, not a soft, hopeful dream that everything will align and feel good, but a solid, grounded understanding that what matters most will often hurt the most on the way there. And that's not a sign of misdirection, that's a sign of transformation. That's the toll road to a life most people will never touch. Ask yourself honestly, have you walked away from something powerful just because it was hard? Have you mistaken challenge for a closed door? Have you told yourself it shouldn't be this difficult and used that to justify quitting? You're not alone in that mistake, but it's time to correct it. Because difficulty is not disapproval. Hardship is not a divine no. Sometimes it's just life clearing the weak from the trail. Sometimes it's life asking, do you really want this? Or were you only committed when it was easy? That's what the path demands of you. Not motivation, not emotion, steel in the bones, fire in the gut. A mind that says this hurts, but this matters more than my hurt. Your feelings are not the guide, they are the noise. Your convictions are the compass. The standards you refuse to break. The values you refuse to compromise. The mission you refuse to abandon. That is what keeps you aligned when nothing feels certain. You cannot afford to let ease become your measurement for direction. Just because something flows doesn't mean it leads you somewhere meaningful. And just because something resists you doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. In fact, the more your path pulls at you, the more likely it is that you're on to something real. Because shallow roads don't fight back. Empty destinations don't test your endurance. Only meaningful ones do. This is how you begin to see struggle differently, not as opposition, but as validation. If it's hard, that means it's stretching you. If it's lonely, that means few are walking it. If it's unclear, that means you're walking by faith, not by comfort. And that is exactly where growth lives. So when the day feels heavy, when you doubt the path, when your heart whispers that maybe you've gone the wrong way, pause, breathe, and remember why you started. Remember what you're building. Remember what you said mattered most. Let that guide you, not your emotions. Let truth be your trail marker, not ease. This is not about making the journey feel better. It's about becoming better despite the journey. It's about walking through the fire without losing your focus, about staying true even when everything inside you wants to retreat. That's how the strong are made, not when it's easy, but when it's excruciating. So don't retreat. Don't turn back just because it's hard. Don't let discomfort deceive you into quitting. Your feelings will scream. Let them. Your fear will protest. Let it. Your fatigue will ask for mercy. Don't give it. Just take one more step, then another, because step by step, you will reach the life you were meant to build, not because it welcomed you, but because you refused to quit when it pushed back. You're not lost. You're just learning to lead yourself forward in the dark. And that's the surest sign you're on the right path. Nobody is coming to save you. You can wait for as long as you like, for the perfect mentor, the ideal timing, a breakthrough that falls into your lap. You can sit and hope that someone sees your struggle, hope that someone throws you a rope, hope that the universe decides you've earned your turn. But here's the truth. No one is coming. No hand is reaching down. No miracle is being mailed. The help you keep searching for out there has been sitting quietly inside you all along, unseen, untapped, and waiting for your permission to rise. This isn't punishment, it's liberation. It means you're not stuck because someone else failed you. You're stuck because you haven't claimed the responsibility to move. And the moment you accept that fully, without excuse or delay, is the moment your entire life begins to shift, because what paralyzes most people isn't lack of ability. It's the illusion of waiting. Waiting for permission, waiting for rescue, waiting for clarity or confidence or courage. But none of those come before you moved. They show up because you moved. You break the spell of helplessness the second you say, "It's on me now." Not in a victimized way, not with blame, but with ownership. No more pointing fingers, no more playing small, no more waiting for someone else to build the ladder out of your hole. You build it, one choice at a time, one action at a time, one refusal to stay still when everything inside you says you should wait. There's a brutal but beautiful moment in every real journey where you stop looking outward and start digging inward. That's the rebirth of personal power. That's when you become dangerous, not because you're loud or violent, but because you no longer expect anything from the outside world that you're not first willing to give to yourself. Respect, effort, momentum, all of it begins with you. Picture a worker trapped deep underground after a tunnel collapse. Dust fills the air, light is gone. There's silence except for the pounding in his chest. He can scream, he can pray, he can pound the rock with his fists. But eventually he realizes the only way out is through. He finds a tool, a rock, a broken piece of wood, and he starts digging. The ceiling doesn't rise, the wall doesn't move, but inch by inch he carves a way forward. Not because someone pulled him free, but because he refused to stay buried. This is what separates those who make it from those who only imagine it. Not intelligence, not luck, not perfect plans, just movement. Relentless, honest. One group waits, the other acts. And it's not always the boldest action. It's not always loud. Sometimes it's small, gritty, exhausting work done in the shadows. But it's movement. That's the difference. Ask yourself, are you still waiting because you hope someone will come fix it for you? Are you delaying your start because deep down, you're hoping something or someone will intervene and remove the pressure? It's a seductive lie. It keeps you safe from the discomfort of action. It keeps you innocent in your own story. But it also keeps you stuck. Here's a truth that stings at first but sets you free. Nobody's coming. And that's not the bad news. That's the best news, because it means your freedom doesn't depend on anyone but you. It means the power was never out there. It was always yours. Buried under layers of hesitation, fear, and excuse. But it's there. And now it's yours to reclaim. You don't need a miracle, you need a decision. A decision to stand up in your own life and say, no one's going to hand this to me. And that's fine. I'll earn it. You decide to act while scared. You move while unsure. You keep going even when progress is slow and results are invisible. That's how self-respect is built. Not in comfort, but in courage. Not when it's easy, but when you finally stop outsourcing your strength. There's a quiet nobility in those who stop begging the world to care and instead build something the world has to notice. They don't wait for doors, they carve their own path. They don't ask for a lighter load, they grow a stronger back. They don't demand sympathy, they become unstoppable. You can be one of them. You already are, if you stop waiting and start becoming. So when you feel overwhelmed, don't spiral. Don't collapse into pity. Get still, get honest, and ask, what can I do right now? Not what would be nice, not what would be ideal, just what's possible. Then do it, and do it again. Inch by inch, day by day, until the walls crack, until the ceiling splits, until the life you wanted is no longer a wish. It's a reality you built with your own hands. The world may not be rushing in to rescue you, but the moment you stop waiting, you won't need rescuing. You'll have become your own answer. Nobody's coming, and that's not your curse, it's your crown. Because it means you are no longer a prisoner of permission. You are the one who decides. You are the one who moves. And you are the one who wins. Results come to the relentless. The world may admire talent, reward brilliance, and celebrate charisma, but in the end, it gives its greatest rewards to one kind of person, the one who refuses to stop. Not the most gifted, not the most charming, the one who doesn't quit, the one who shows up again after the dust settles, the one who keeps moving when everyone else has sat down, the one who decides that if it takes 1,000 steps, they'll take them. And if it takes 10,000 more, they'll take those too. Relentlessness is the most underrated force in the world. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't beg for attention. It just continues, quietly, brutally, steadily, and it wins. Every obstacle that shows up in your life has the same mission: to break you, to slow you down, to push you just far enough that you think it's easier to give in. And that's exactly what average does. It breaks at resistance. It folds when it's inconvenient. It says, maybe this isn't the right time, or maybe I'm not meant for this. But not you, because you weren't made for average. You weren't wired to surrender. Deep inside you, there's something unshakable, a voice that whispers, not with volume, but with certainty, keep going. That voice is the beginning of greatness. It's what separates you from everyone else who looks the part but lacks the will. You win not by luck, not by flashes of brilliance, but by refusing to stop until the job is done. There's a kind of power that comes when you make a decision with no exit. When you say, I'm not interested in how long it takes. I'm not worried about when it will happen. I'm just not stopping until it does. That kind of resolve is rare, but it is unbeatable. The world doesn't know how to deal with someone who refuses to back down. Obstacles get tired, problems weaken, but the person who just keeps showing up, eventually they break through, not because they overpowered the world, but because they outlasted it. Picture a river. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It doesn't strike hard once and hope for a miracle. It just moves, carving through stone, bending through valleys. It wears down mountains, not with force, but with consistency, with time, with patience. That's what you must become. Not a lightning bolt, but a river. Steady, purposeful, unstoppable. Every time you feel tired, every time you want to stop, ask yourself this: am I truly at my limit or just facing resistance? There's a difference. True exhaustion is rare. Most of what we call burnout is really just the discomfort of growth, the ache of stretching past what we're used to. And that's where most people turn around. They think discomfort means stop. But for you, it means keep going. Because the mission hasn't changed. The goal hasn't vanished. The promise you made to yourself, that vision you once held in your heart, it still waits. But it's only yours if you persist, if you keep pressing when there's no applause. If you push when it's dry, when it's dark, when it's discouraging. If you keep your focus locked not on what's happening now, but on what will happen if you don't stop. Don't fall for the lie that you need another strategy, another hack, another shortcut. What you need is more patience. Not passive patience, the kind that waits and wishes, but active patience, the kind that says, I'll show up today, and again tomorrow, and the day after that, because the outcome belongs to those who endure long enough to see it arrive. We live in a world of speed and spectacle. Everyone wants it fast. Everyone wants it flashy. But the truth is, most of those people will be gone when the fire fades. They'll abandon the path when it gets steep. You'll still be walking, still be building, still be rising. Because you're not here for speed, you're here for victory. And victory is reserved for the relentless. When nothing seems to work, when it feels like you're running in circles, remember this: the resistance is counting on your frustration. It wants you impatient. It wants you distracted. But if you stand your ground, if you keep stacking days, if you keep showing up without the need for immediate reward, you win, always. Because relentless action, persistent, focused, unshakable action defeats resistance every time. You don't have to be the best. You don't have to be the most gifted. You just have to be the one who won't go away. The one who keeps learning, keeps pushing, keeps moving. The one who becomes impossible to ignore. Not by shouting, but by never leaving. You don't need to dazzle. You just need to endure. So make the choice now. Decide that the only direction is forward, no matter the pace, no matter the setback, no matter how long it takes, because when you choose to be relentless, when you set your eyes on the goal and refuse to shift them, you become the most dangerous kind of person in the world, the one who won't quit. And in the end, the world has to move for that person. It may resist, it may delay, but it always yields to the one who never stops. Winners decide once and defend it daily. Most people make decisions the way they make tea, hot for a moment, then cold before they've even tasted the purpose behind it. Fired up one day, discouraged the next. They commit on Monday with full force, declare their goals with conviction, and by Friday, they're already rethinking, renegotiating, and eventually retreating. This cycle continues not because they lack intelligence or drive, but because they never truly decided. They never closed the door on any other outcome. They left the back door cracked open for doubt, for comfort, for escape. And so they circle the same mountain again and again, calling it a journey. But those who rise, those who break the cycle, decide once, and then they defend that decision every single day. They don't look for a fresh wave of motivation each morning. They don't poll their emotions for approval. They simply wake up, remember the mission, and get to work. This is the difference between the wishful and the unstoppable. Most people think strength is in deciding again and again, but real power lies in deciding once with finality and never reopening the discussion. You say, this is who I am. This is what I'm building. This is what I will do. And then, whether the day is bright or bleak, whether applause rains down or silence echoes, you show up. You don't re-vote. You don't wait for inspiration to drag you out of bed. You move because you said you would. Weak minds decide. They negotiate. They bargain with fear and fatigue. Maybe just not today. Maybe later will be better. Maybe I was wrong to begin with. And the moment you entertain those maybes, your path begins to dissolve beneath you. Because your strength doesn't come from how often you decide, it comes from how fiercely you defend what you've already chosen. Every time you decide, you create friction. You waste energy. You give space for hesitation to fester. And, worse, you train your mind to expect escape routes instead of building endurance. But when you decide with full commitment, when you seal it like a vow and refuse to touch the lock again, your energy isn't scattered, it's channeled, focused, directed. You're no longer wondering if you'll do it, you're working on how you'll do it. Imagine a warrior handed a mission. He doesn't question it every time the wind changes. He doesn't stop at every bend in the road to ask, do I still want this? When the ground shakes, he plants his feet. When the silence stretches, he tightens his grip. He doesn't wait for comfort or crowd validation. He remembers his decision and he moves forward. Because the commitment was made, not conditionally, but completely. And that's the kind of decision your life is asking of you. Not a temporary flame, but a permanent fire. Not an experiment, but an oath. You must be the person who walks in certainty, even when the path feels uncertain. Who doesn't ask, do I feel like it today, but instead says, I decided and I will act. This isn't about being rigid or refusing to learn. It's about refusing to retreat when discomfort shows up. Because the majority of battles you'll face won't be with the world. They'll be with your own mind. A mind that will try to talk you out of progress, that will suggest comfort when the real path demands effort, that will whisper, what's the harm in just one day off? And in that moment, you don't argue, you don't reason, you remind yourself, I've already decided. Ask yourself, are you truly committed or are you still debating? Because if you're still debating, you're still vulnerable. You're still waiting for circumstances to align. You're still giving power to mood and momentum instead of principle and purpose. Real success doesn't require perfect conditions. It requires a sealed decision, one that is not revisited every time the journey gets heavy, one that is enforced by action, not emotion, because you will not win any war that you're willing to walk away from, and you will not build anything lasting if you let your feelings decide the structure. There will be days when the work feels pointless, when your progress seems invisible, when the voices around you say it's not worth it, and the voice inside you starts to agree. And on those days, you'll be tempted to adjust the course, to water it down, to delay, to quit. But those are the days that matter most, because that's where your decision is tested. And if you hold the line, if you stay in the fight, you don't just move forward, you become something unshakable. Not because it was easy, but because it was yours. Yours to carry, yours to claim, yours to complete. So decide. And then defend that decision every single day. Not by talking about it, not by feeling inspired, but by doing what is required. Whether the sun is shining or the storms are rolling in, whether the finish line is in sight or miles away, you show up. You execute. You honor the promise you made to yourself. Because in the end, it's not the most talented, the most connected, or even the most intelligent who rise. It's the ones who make a real decision and never let go of it. The ones who understand that greatness isn't built in bursts, but in the quiet discipline of those who don't re-vote on who they are becoming. Seal the door, burn the backup plan, and remind yourself, I've already decided. That's how people destined to rise begin, and that's how they finish. You are meant to lead yourself first. Before you can lead a business, a team, a movement, or even a family, you must first lead yourself. Not when it's convenient, not when the conditions are perfect, but especially when everything in you wants to do anything else. That is the truest, highest form of leadership. Not commanding others, not barking orders, but mastering yourself in silence when no one's watching and no one's clapping. Self-leadership is the foundation of every kind of influence. Without it, Titles are hollow, speeches are noise, and authority is fragile. You can pretend for a while, you can posture and inspire with words, but eventually life demands proof, and proof begins in the moments where your feelings scream, "Not today," and your discipline responds, "We're going anyway." You begin this process not by trying to lead others, but by commanding your own thoughts, your own choices, your own mornings. The first hour of your day, what you do with it, what you don't do with it, tells the truth. It's where leadership is either